What is the scariest illness or genetic disease that humans can get? Story 1. Rabies is terrifying. As someone who had to be in a hunting group to track down and put down several large dogs who had been bitten and gotten away, I can say I saw firsthand how utterly terrifying rabies is. I hated every second of it, but the thought of the danger and how much hell those pups were made it pretty clear I had to do what I had to help do. Seriously, do I ever get bit and it's too late for me? Someone did me a favor and put me to hell. Honestly, you have my permission to just take me out because that is not how I am gonna go. Story 2. Sanfilippo syndrome and progeria are both horrendous. I only know about it because of some parents on Instagram who share it. It's such a shame more people don't talk about Sanfilippo syndrome. My niece is a young toddler with thick eyebrows, so I'm silently holding my breath. She displays no other signs of Sanfilippo, and technically the thick eyebrows aren't even a sign, but it's terrible. Story 3. That one where your skin just falls off at the slightest touch sounds horrendous. I watched a documentary about a little kid with it. I'd rather be dead. Toxic epidermal necrolysis. You have a reaction to some type of medicine, and your skin blisters and peels off in sheets. Or there is epidermolysis bullosa, which is a genetic disease that causes the skin to be very fragile. Any small amount of pressure or friction causes the skin to blister and peel off. Both sound terrible. Story 4. We saw our uncle in June. 74 years old but slim and fit, still worked his carpentry business building houses. In August, he developed a bit of a limp in his left leg. A few weeks later, he was diagnosed with ALS. He was basically immobile about a month later and died in December. No warning, no family history. Terrifying. My grandpa was similar. In June, he was underneath a car with me, fixing it up. He was a farmer for years, so fit, had little to no issue with movement. He had trouble breathing. In November, I was told about his heart and lung problems. We kept thinking it would get better. He was in the hospital with very high CO2 levels, like 3/4 sex normal levels. Went on a BiPAP machine for just a few hours a day to use it constantly, then was wheelchair bound, then gone in January of this year at 82 when his dad made it to 95 and his mom to 99. Story 5. For genetic diseases, literally anything. You have goals in your life. You want to have something in the future. But nope. You just found out you are screwed for the rest of your life for uncontrollable reasons and might have to heavily change your lifestyle so you won't die from seizures or anything, even if anyone else living like you wouldn't have close to anything like that issue. Story 6. Tetanus. I don't know how anyone else hasn't said it, but my God, it's terrifying. Have muscle spasms so intense that they shatter your own bones. Yeah, I'm definitely going to keep up on my shots because that would be terrifying to have. Story 7. MND motor neuron disease. My sister was diagnosed at 36 years old in 2019 and suffered a cruel, slow death, years of pain, and losing her ability to do everything. She passed away in May this year, finally at peace. MND. So many people don't realize their pain. Finally at peace says you fully understand what she went through and most likely helped. Gone, not forgotten, and you and the family need a break more than most people do in years. Much respect. Story 8. Cystic fibrosis. Not only is it incurable and terminal, but it's quite miserable for the sufferers. They can live a long time, but none of it will be pleasant. A buildup of mucus in the lungs that not even a lung transplant can permanently fix. It's Story 9. Fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva. Your muscles are slowly replaced by bone muscles and connective tissue, and injury makes it worse, so surgery doesn't work. You have to eventually choose what position to be in for the rest of your life, and you can live into your 50s. A few hundred cases exist. This is the one I thought of with the title. Story 10. I am a hemophilia carrier. I inherited it from my father. It's caused by a mutation on the X chromosome. If you only have one, it causes bleeding. In severe cases like my father's, the blood seeps into the joint capsules and the blood pulls the joints apart. As the bleed heals, the body reabsorbs tissue. By the time he had died at 40, he was missing an entire kneecap and had 1/3 of the other. He also contracted HIV during the tainted flood scandal in the 80s. 5 family members did, and all died. Story 11. Prion diseases are scary because you can just get them. Like one day, a protein in your brain could just decide to fold itself wrong. Then it will tell all the ones they are next to fold themselves wrong. Then you have holes in your brain. There's one called fatal familial insomnia where prions slowly destroy the part of your brain that regulates sleep, so you slowly lose the ability to sleep over the course of a few months, and then you die within a year of onset. Of course, the familial part means it's genetic and inherited. There is also a version that's spontaneous. Story 12, Huntington's. It's autosomal dominant. Unlike most other guaranteed fatal conditions that present post-birth, such as Tay-Sachs, meaning if one of your parents had it, you have a 50% chance of having it too. The worst part is that it doesn't present until someone is in their 30s or 40s, so you have no way of knowing for sure until someone dies of it. If you have an adopted grandparent or parent, you have zero way of knowing. Enjoy. Story 13. I don't think it wins Scariest, but maybe a nomination. I find it scary as hell anyway. You may have cliché notions about it, but bipolar disorder. I have a condition, of course, and I can tell you the pain when I'm in a depressive or manic episode is staggering. The only way I can describe what it feels like in a depressive episode is that it feels like your soul is dying. It hurts like nothing else. And mania is not all happiness and butterflies. It is often extreme painful agitation. It's cyclical. Depending on your severity, it could happen constantly. I've been hospitalized over 30 times. This year alone, I've been in an episode almost the entire year. People don't know it's also neurodegenerative and that every episode causes brain damage. Anyway, that's my spell. Story 14, herpes encephalitis, but in very rare cases like Clive Waring in the UK back in the 1980s, it attacked his central nervous system and damaged the hippocampus. His memory lasts less than half a minute and lives every day thinking he woke up from a coma. The only things he remembers from before getting sick are that he has kids, can still play the piano, and loves his wife Deborah. Story 15. I have a disease called hidradenitis suppurativa. You get painful lumps all over your body, groin, armpit, stomach, on your private area, butt, even the face. They can get as big as a golf ball. The worst part is that it can take weeks for them to go away. They leave very bad scars and they smell abysmal. There are worse conditions out there, however, this one causes a very poor quality of life. Story 16. Schizophrenia always freaked me out. The fact it can develop in an otherwise completely normal person in early adulthood and you slowly lose your grip on reality is horrifying. Pair that with auditory and visual hallucinations, it sounds like torture. Obviously, there are varying levels, but the extreme end of it sounds terrifying. Story 17. I have 2 friends who have brittle bone syndrome. They are both largely wheelchair-bound, with one of them able to walk on her own a bit, but the other basically either being in his wheelchair or lying on his bed. The latter once nearly died because the joystick on his wheelchair got caught under his desk and kept moving it forward. He literally would have crushed his ribcage in a matter of minutes. Fortunately, a friend of his was around and had the presence of mind to pull the emergency brake on the battery. His parents had constant rumors about using him along with a lot of CPS investigations because he'd show up to his school looking beat up or with casts and rumors would spread. At one point, the rumor was his father pushed him down an elevator shaft for some reason, but in reality, he'd just fallen while getting into bed and broke like 5, 6 bones. It's also crazy how not accessible most places are. The guy made a career off of building an app to track which buildings at a major university were wheelchair accessible, despite the university claiming everywhere was accessible. Technically true, but you'd have to go a quarter mile around to get to the only accessible entrance. It's bizarre thinking about how a single fall or someone bumping into them could potentially kill either of them. It's kind of nerve-wracking in any public setting. Story 18. My wife has PCA, posterior cortical atrophy. She's 56. Symptoms started in 2019, but we associated it with grief from her parents dying, forgetfulness, sight problems, and depth perception issues. It's somewhat related to Alzheimer's, but it affects the visual cortex first. The brain does not translate what the eyes are seeing. Diagnosed in 2021, in 4 years she went from a fully functioning person to needing constant supervision and care. There isn't much she can do for herself. Vocal communication is very tough as she starts sentences and can't finish them. The neurologist gave an estimate of 5 years, and it seems to be tracking in that direction. I work from home, so I'm able to care for her needs at the moment. I predict by next year things will be much worse. There is no cure or treatment and no known cause. The worst part is that it's like she's already dead because she doesn't remember much, even me sometimes. I miss her. Story 19. Flesh-eating bacteria. Did you notice a pimple? No concern, let's just pop it. A few hours go by and you start to experience tenderness, surrounding redness and heat, and it starts to get darker and bigger while also spreading down your back. We'll get to a hospital immediately, as this is called necrotizing fasciitis, which consists of 2 types of bacteria that work together to rapidly eat your skin and muscle. The only option is to be treated with life-saving fluids, IV antibiotics, and rapid surgery that is most likely to leave people disfigured and disabled. What makes it worse is that it's a poorly understood infection. Always check your pimples. Story 20. Motor neuron disease. Imagine your entire body stops working, but you're completely aware mentally. You can't move, talk, or breathe for yourself, but your mental capacity is still 100%. Being trapped in your own body for years until your brain eventually stops working too. It was the scariest thing I've ever seen a person go through, and I couldn't even imagine existing in that state. What goes through their head? It's dehumanizing. Story 21. I don't know the name, but my former drum teacher has a really rare autoimmune illness causing his bones to eat themselves. There are only 2 other people in the whole world who have it. Every month for 4 years, he had to go to court and claim the veracity of his high need for morphine. Now he just eats opiates and waits for research to at least understand. I love this guy. He named his daughter after me, and I don't know what to do when I see him. Story 22. The flu, specifically influenza of virus subtype H1N1. All of the diseases and syndromes listed throughout this thread are terrifying in their own right, but they all share one thing in common. They are not capable of expansive transmission. Prions, rabies, flesh-eating bacteria, brain-eating amoebae, FFI cannot become an epidemic, Ebola, Marburg, etc. Can, but they are much easier to control in sanitary cultures and would be a dead end in the developed world. The flu, specifically a /H1N1, killed 50 million people in just 2 years. COVID-19 took out about 7 million in an 8 billion person world. Those are rookie numbers when you compare it to some of the far darker moments in history where far more dangerous viruses got a foothold. Story 23. ALS. My mom lost her ability to swallow, which includes even her spit. Try to let your saliva just fall down your throat. It is horrific. My mom lost her ability to swallow, talk, move her tongue, hold up her head, choke on mucus, and have a constant dry mouth and breathe all within 8 months. Other people lose the ability to move at all. ALS is sometimes referred to as the glass coffin. All the while, most people lose no cognitive function, but people will treat you as though you don't understand the world around you. It traps you in your body and crushes your spirit before it kills you. Story 24. Duchenne muscular dystrophy, a genetic disease affecting young boys. Basically, all the muscles in their body start to waste away and stop developing. Eventually, they are unable to use their heart muscles or breathe, leading to death. Unfortunately, a lot of boys affected by this disease do not make it to their teenage years. Story 25. Chronic fatigue syndrome. Pushing through post-exertional malaise will make it worse until you're bedbound and can hardly do anything for yourself. If you manage to recognize it or get a diagnosis before that, you might be lucky enough to find a doctor that knows a tiny bit about it and believes you, but for the most part, mainstream medicine ignores it and denies its existence and refuses to educate itself on the latest research. So despite your pathetic state, you're forced to do all that research yourself if you want any chance of getting better. Throughout all this, you wish you would just die in order to stop the suffering, but your memories of life before you were ill give you some resemblance of hope, and you keep trying to survive in the hope you might one day have a life again. Story 26. Parkinson's disease is terrifying. Not only does it have no cure, but you have to live knowing that it's going to get worse and more painful with time. Slowly losing the ability to control your body, everything in your body hurts, and tomorrow it'll get worse. A normal life is hard. You might even feel guilty if you get married and have kids, because you might be sentencing them to a horrible death since it's genetic. My heart truly goes out to all the people that have it. Story 27. EB, epidermolysis bullosa. There was a documentary about a man who had this and he couldn't wait for it to end.
Basically, your skin becomes so fragile that it tears, blisters, and creates sores extremely easily. Constant infections and pain because you have constantly open wounds everywhere on your body, both inside and outside. Story 28. To me, it is Alzheimer's. My grandmother had Alzheimer's, and I watched her slowly slip away before she spent 10 years in a nursing home before she died. Her 3 sons died from Alzheimer's as well. I am now watching my intelligent, independent psychologist mother fade away. Just little parts of her personality have suddenly vanished and been replaced by someone who is not sure of herself anymore. It was devastating, and my poor father had to see his best friend leave him, and today that broke my heart. I don't know what I would do without my mother, but for now I just cling to her and try to savor each and every moment we make together. Story 29. Hypokalemic periodic paralysis. My family has a history of it. The primary symptom is temporary paralysis of the body, like having your legs or arms fall asleep but more thoroughly. What we have experienced causing attacks are yeasty foods, fresh breads, or pizza. Strenuous exercise followed by rest. So imagine going out with some friends to get dinner after a workout, pizza and beer. You wake up in the middle of the night afterwards, unable to move or even raise your head. Like sleep paralysis, except it goes on for hours. I live alone, so I essentially had to lie there for what seemed like hours. Eventually, it lessened enough I was able to flop out of bed. I was able to unlock my phone and use voice commands to call my folks. Story 30. Familial adenomatous polyposis. A flaw in the APC/cancer suppressing gene. I hate living knowing I'll get cancer. Chemo is pointless, so they just remove affected organs as they become covered in adenomas. Those in my family who have it get checks every 12, 24 months. I'm on 3, 6-month checks. Ours grow so fast since we have no defense to it. My auntie had her 12-month check and came back fine. 4 months later, she had side pain and trouble breathing. She was told it was most likely emphysema and fallstones. Docs finally did a scan and saw that she had secondary cancer in liver, stomach, and lung. They couldn't find the original site, turned out to be duodenum. She was told it was stage 4 and would be 12 months or so till death. Cancer consumed her 4 days later. I still struggle to process her death. She was my best friend, and to see her normal and healthy one day and dead 4 days later hurts my soul. Story 31. Sanfilippo syndrome, aka childhood dementia. You can unknowingly pass this on to your children. Both parents can carry this gene mutation recessively, and around toddler age, they'll start regressing. A lot of parents get an incorrect autism diagnosis. It eventually robs your child of the ability to speak, walk, sleep, etc. There's no cure, and the average child dies before they're a teenager. Story 32. I see a lot of physical disabilities listed here, but between bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder, life is hard to say the least. I'm in my 40s. At some point, mental health stops being something that makes you unique and turns into something that ruins your life. Everyone I've ever known has abandoned me. Mood swings and irrational actions due to my condition have systematically destroyed every relationship I've ever had. As time has gone on, my condition has worsened. I went from working for the largest tech company on the planet, use your imagination, to being on disability because of my aggressive and sometimes violent mood swings. I am married, but I'd wager to say we are codependent with our own individual conditions. Story 33. I'm a bit partial, but most, if not all, degenerative neurological conditions. As a 31-year-old diagnosed with Friedreich's ataxia when I was 6, watching your body and abilities slowly break down before your eyes and knowing that you can't do anything about it or even have any reason why because you, and it really puts your mind in a weird perspective. Like people overthink potential what-if scenarios to the point of obsession. I can't drink from a cup without using a straw anymore, and I could a month ago. But more importantly, how nice was the weather today? Story 34, Lesch-Nyhan syndrome. It's a genetic disorder that causes a lot of issues, but it's famous because people with this disorder have severe, uncontrollable, self-injurious behavior. People born with this disorder will chew their own lips off or bite off their fingers. They normally have to be restrained in some way to prevent serious injury. There's no cure. Story 35. I've seen some photos of bones with bone cancer that look so painful. Also, glioblastoma multiforme. It's a brain cancer that's inoperable because the tumor has tendrils that weave throughout the brain, making it very difficult to remove. When you see video progressions of people who have that disease, they go from perfectly normal to not even being able to speak. Worst of all, this cancer progresses so rapidly that people usually die within a year to 18 months of being diagnosed. Story 36, lupus. It's a great mimic of other diseases and will be ignored by many doctors. I know on the House MD show, Hugh Laurie would say, it's never lupus when there was a difficult case. It's awful, though. Your own immune system is trying to kill you over anything. It's like burning down the house because a light bulb blew out. Story 37. My sister got a pedicure in an upscale salon that lined their tubs and clearly sterilized equipment. She got a staph infection on her leg that nearly killed her, no joke. It ate down to the bone, and she had a hole in her leg the size of a grapefruit for forever, and that was recovery. She knew that staph can exist anywhere, on your skin even, and that's what the doc thinks happened. Staph was on her skin and got into her body via an abrasion from the pedicure. She still has a massive divot where the sore was, and terrible nerve damage that affects her ability to walk. Know what did not help her? Spraying everything down with Lysol her whole life. She has some odd thing where she soaks everything in Lysol, and the doctor said it's not good because she doesn't get exposed to things she should. Story 38, primary amoebic meningoencephalitis, aka brain-eating amoeba disease. Basically, you snort some infected water, and over the next 10 days, amoeba eat their way through your nose into your brain. By the time you have symptoms, you're already dead, and your body just hasn't caught on to the fact. You die when they eat your brainstem, and your brain can't coordinate the muscles in your chest to breathe anymore. I know someone whose son died from it. He was a young, promising triathlete who went to a training camp in Texas. 2 weeks after he left, he was dead. The doctors figured it out about 2 days after he went to the hospital, by which time there was nothing they could do. The good news is that the U.S. has like 12 cases a year because of how picky the amoeba are with their living conditions. They only like really warm, chlorinated, or non-salty water. There is now a drug to help with it, but research is progressing very slowly because there are so few cases per year, so research is really challenging.